Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to our live stream and video game news. The live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel with video game news. Today is Friday, December 2nd. I'm potentially getting my sleep schedule finally in line, and in the middle of December, getting it in line and being awake during the day really just means being colder. Although sleeping during the night is probably also the colder part, so yeah, unless you're going to go into full hibernation mode, you're going to be cold regardless. But yeah, certainly I could sleep till noon and then enjoy missing out a few early morning hours of coldness. Let's see, they've apparently made some improvements to the daily missions, which certainly could use it. Before, there was an inflict damage on your opponent for 8,000 and declare an attack on a monster 2. Now there is a fusion pendulum summon, link summon a monster 3 times, ritual summon, synchro summon, and XYZ summon 3 times. Which, it's not better, really. Because what this means is no longer are you going to have a generic daily quest that you can get done with your standard meta deck you want to play. You're now going to have something that has a fusion pendulum or link summon, and you're going to have something that has synchro, XYZ, or ritual. And ritual, synchro, and XYZ is going to be fairly rare. Let's see. And it really doesn't even seem like there's a real connection between why you would get rid of these two and add those two. New season of ranked duels has changed over. I did make it to platinum. Miracles of all miracles. So now I have been dropped down in standard. They've got a whole new animation here too. I've been dropped down to gold 5, and that leaves us with just working our way back up to platinum ideally. And you know, if we don't have any other distractions, ideally getting to like diamond 5 would be great. Even getting to diamond 1 would be nice. It's unlikely that that would happen, but that is the case. Let's see what new missions we have today. Let's see, there was this daily quest that I guess I did off screen while I was playing. Now ritual, synchro, and XYZ. We'll test this out and see if our default zootropic deck will get us this quest done. Log in, and we'll do a duel live later. And as far as lifetime, we're just slowly still making progress there. Although, even if we just get all of this done, getting the diamond still is a requirement. So you'll always have this quest until you get to diamond. And we still really aren't anywhere close to getting to level 50 as far as a dual rank. Which that dual rank does not make a lot of sense to even exist in the game. For the accountability section, I was playing the Vagrant. At a certain point, I literally ran out of hard drive space because I was just not paying attention enough to it. And then I missed... I really only lost about 5 minutes of gameplay footage because I ran out of space though, so it wasn't any problem. And while I was trying to play the Vagrant, also my neighbor was having solar panel switch over electrical panels installed, which was very annoying because it's just a lot of banging for like 10 hours straight. And boy is it ugly. It's just a heck of a lot of metal now on the side of my neighbor's house. It did seem like with all that metal, you'd have to assume that there's some good stuff in those electrical panels for the solar cells, but yeah, that is a big trade-off. And ideally, if I was ever going to get solar panels, I would want all that electronics to mostly be on the inside of my house in the garage, and I don't know if you can really get them to do that. And I don't know if I really would ever want to put solar panels on my roof anyways. Inherently, it needs to be a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient, and have maybe slightly more life to them. When you buy a house, you expect it to last at least 30 years because you're buying probably a 30-year mortgage. So if you have solar panels that are only going to last 5 to 10 years, that's a problem. But the efficiency issue, I would be much happier installing a small cold fusion device in my garage, but no such thing actually exists. Although I did see a company is working on what they are calling a small fusion device, but what their scale of small is still basically a shipping container that you would be able to move around on an 18-wheeler truck, not something that would actually fit in a garage. And it's still providing, I think it was somewhere around 22 megawatts, this small cold fusion, well, not cold fusion really, small fusion device. And 22 megawatts per hour without any real controls and consistency there is too much for a single house. It's probably pretty reasonable for a neighborhood, but it still gets into the whole idea of a grid concept. What I can really say about the Vagrant is not particularly nice, I guess, is the way to say this. The idea of the Vagrant being a Metroidvania game just doesn't really feel true to me. It might be somewhat close to a Castlevania game. It does not feel like it is very much like a Metroid game at all, because you just never get abilities that you unlock when you beat a boss in the Vagrant. You have to buy those abilities, and it's only a slight spoiler to say that there are a bunch of abilities that you just will not get unlocked by the end of the game. The game ends fairly abruptly, and then it's just New Game Plus, and perhaps at the end of a second playthrough, at that point you will have unlocked all of the abilities. But there is some weirdness certainly in that game, because there are crafting components, and I never saw a crafting ability. I never found anybody that would craft anything for me, nor did I ever see a skill that you could unlock to craft. There are runes in the game, but there seems to be no real way to merge runes together to get better runes. So that's confusing too. It just kind of makes the whole game feel a little half-finished. And generally speaking, I kind of do feel like there's some lack of polish in the game, and they could have had 8 areas instead of 6 dungeons. A lot of the rooms in the dungeons, which most of the rooms are actually just outside areas and not caves like in Metroid, or rooms in a castle like in Castlevania. They are just kind of like, alright, this is a section of forest, so we're going to make that a room. But a lot of the rooms have nothing in them at all. There's a lot of places where you need a triple jump, and yet there seems to be no triple jump in the game at all. So I have no idea how you would reach a lot of the areas. The game in the final battle felt particularly sluggish, and some of that has to do with the weapons having different swing speeds and the game not really telling you that. The game has a ton of RPG elements, and they don't really exist for a good enough reason to justify their own existence. But the thing that will smack you in the face in The Vagrant more than anything is that the main character and every other female character in the game, with the exception of one old lady, has a massive amount of cleavage showing and giant breasts. And it's just this weird fetish that the artist wanted to do, I suppose, and it's just never addressed, and it just never really makes canonical sense in the story, and it doesn't go anywhere. You never get to see anything other than cleavage. The main character is in a bikini, so you're also seeing a lot of her legs and belly, but it just makes it boring, frankly. Like, it's exciting to go to the beach potentially and see women and ladies in skimpy bikinis, but if you've been there for 8 hours, or more accurately, I think I may have been looking at it for somewhere between 15 and 20 hours, it just gets blasé and boring, and it's not particularly even well animated, so there's just nothing to really see there. And that really sucks, because they're kind of selling the game on that. They also sell the game a lot on its hand painting art style, and all the hand paintings, of which there really aren't that many, aren't really that good, in my opinion. It just doesn't feel like they spent a lot of time on it or put a lot of detail in it. It's all very smudged in its art style, and maybe that is just the artist's style, but it doesn't look good for a video game at all to have just smudged, lacking detail, still images. There's a ridiculous amount of story that's not voiced in the game also, which breaks up the game too much. Yeah. Perhaps if they had cut out all the story and just made it a quick 5-hour game, I would have been a little bit happier with The Vagrant. But as it stands, it's just kind of in the middle. It's in the mushy middle, and it's just mediocre as a game. Definitely, I suspect games like Dead Cells were not out, and Blasphemous wasn't out. When you get to the end of The Vagrant, you start to see a lot of horrific, gory imagery, because you're basically in hell. And it is very similar to something like Blasphemous, but that's definitely not what you're shown for the first at least 2/3 of the game, so it feels kind of bait and switchy. To have just a completely different focus, because up until the point, you mostly are seeing just you're mostly just seeing medieval fantasy stuff as far as the arts. You're seeing people in armor, big pigs, rats, slimes, things like that. Think I'm gonna lose here. It does give me an interesting idea, certainly. I bought that game Haiti, where the artist made a CGI, I think probably bought a CGI 3D model of a character with a big butt, and then made a game around just putting the camera right behind the big butt of the character. And so it gives me a chance of, I guess, talking about exploitation in the field of video games. And what I mean by that is like exploitation films, which in the sense of video games, exploitation films really don't even quite line up, because exploitation films, in a lot of ways, like the black exploitation films in the 60s and 70s, that they were giving work to black actors, certainly, but it was only if they were playing certain roles that were demeaning and propagating untruths or stereotypes or just demeaning things. So you have things even like Shaft. Shaft was a black exploitation film. I'm pretty sure you'd categorize it like that, where there's just a lot of pimps and hoes and drugs and drug dealers, and they're just not being portrayed in a positive light, or being given opportunities that other actors would have been given. So in that sense, you're keeping real people down, real actors down, not giving them opportunities. In the video game sense, what you would call exploitation is more of a tongue-in-cheek, I would say, description of a game, and it's definitely not a description that people really use. But in the case of The Vagrant, I would say, yeah, you're taking the protagonist 8-bit character and exploiting her by having her in this bikini armor, much in line with a lot of the sex exploitation game movies of the 80s and 90s, or 70s and 60s even, where you would have female actors being exploited wearing skimpy bikini armor in things not too dissimilar from like the Conan the Barbarian movie. And even the Conan the Barbarian movie was basically exploiting Arnold Schwarzenegger at that time, as a Austrian actor who was not very much of a smart person at that time, I imagine, and not very good at speaking English. But yeah, so there might very well be a genre. Well, I am more than happy to take quick victories like this. Let's just keep that going. There might be a bit of a genre there, but honestly, there wouldn't be that many video games that you could even put in the pseudo-exploitation category, because you're not really exploiting anybody. The real exploitation that's happening in the game industry is obviously underpaying the programmers and animators and writers and voice actors, and just like all the people actually developing it are getting exploited, but they're not being exploited on the screen. And I'm sure a lot of gaffers and cameramen were also exploited in Hollywood, or are still being exploited. So I wouldn't really concern myself with that, but the problem with the idea of exploitation games as potentially a valid concept is you can just do better, frankly. And most adult games, I don't think you really can go into the category of calling an adult game that is actually advertising itself properly for what it's offering and giving the customer satisfaction by delivering the items as it was advertised. I don't think that really would fall in the category of being an exploitation game. So had The Vagrant advertised itself as it's a sort of Metroidvania type game with the character in a bikini, and then at some point they had mentioned the bikini or made it more skimpy or really made it a joke, there was like a running gag, I wouldn't really call that exploitation. The fact that it's just never mentioned makes it feel exploitative. It really felt like if there had been voice acting, the main character could have been a lot like one of the characters in the anime Slayers, where it's not the main protagonist, but one of the side female protagonists has big boobs and talks about it and jokes about it and makes fun of the main protagonist lady for having small boobs. And that could have been just a reoccurring joke throughout the game, but it doesn't happen unless it happens in the Japanese version of the game, which I do think The Vagrant is originally a Japanese game, and they localized it and censored it, which, if The Vagrant is an example of what localization / censorship can do, that's a real scary example. But yeah, I probably won't have another excuse to play Hades, so potentially playing Hades as a way of comparing it to, hey, if you want to make a character that is scantily clad or skimpy, you should really go all out with it and fully commit to that gag. There's also just no outfit swaps in the entire game. I found very late near the end of the game you could spend 8 million mana to buy a second bikini that barely looks any different than the first bikini, which you just won't in your first playthrough have 8 million mana. The economic system in The Vagrant is completely broken. Things are really, really expensive for no good reason. And then there's no reason to sell any items in your first playthrough, because once you are close to a second playthrough being done, you'll unlock abilities that would sell your items for 10% more. Even at that point, when you're selling items, you're getting coins, and there's not really a reason to get coins. The whole system seems like it's designed so that you would just play the game over and over and over again, and I just can't imagine that there's a reason why you would want that. Even if the game totally randomized itself and all the areas were different, which the game would have had to have told me that after I beat it the first time, well, I was hoping that that would have reduced his attack down to 0. But yeah, I still really wouldn't have wanted to play the game a second time. Like, I tried it for a few minutes just to see if things would be different on a second playthrough, but it definitely didn't seem like it was any different. Like, the story would have changed. Like, there is potentially a possibility of saying, hey, here's the alternate history telling of the story. Now you're going to get good endings instead of bad endings. Since most of the endings when you defeat a chapter of the game is kind of bad. But no, it seems very much like it's all the exact same events. What stuns me the most about The Vagrant, and I'll stop talking about The Vagrant here in a second, is that it was rated very positively, because this is definitely a chip in what has been a fairly solid rock of being able to trust reviews on Steam, and I just don't know why The Vagrant would have been rated very positively. My only hope and guess is it's because there was less competition when it came out, which is somewhat believable, that when it came out there wouldn't have been games like Blasphemous or Dead Cells. And it certainly highlights that if Nintendo ever did release the Metroid games, even, let alone all their games on Steam, that there is a long list of games that would stop being worth playing if you could just play Metroid on Steam. And you can basically play, I think, Castlevania games on Steam at this point, but that wasn't, I think, the case when The Vagrant was released. And it does create another weird situation where you have the game The Vagrant coming to consoles, and they're not really feeling like there's a reason why it's coming to consoles. Other than it seems like everything eventually just comes to consoles. Well, YouTube came out with a update on their advertiser-friendly guidelines on their YouTube channel, but they have not put out any Twitter posting on that. There has been a YouTube advertisers posting that came out today in the past couple hours, but no official like posting. And I wonder if that's because specific people on YouTube have given up and abandoned Twitter, and this might be the beginning of me getting less information by sticking to Twitter. But I don't know still really where to go. Mastodon still seems like it's too difficult. I've seen some people. I heard one person trying to push people to a service called Trello, or I think that was the name of it. Alright. If I can actually turn this around and win, I will be shocked. I don't know if I really followed along enough to understand what the advertiser changes are. It didn't seem like it was specifically focusing on one topic, or so I don't know which of the slight changes it sounded like it was doing actually are the thing that YouTube is really interested in curbing, or if YouTube really is that interested in curbing anything. I know one of the categories was adult content, and I know that they're now not making any different opinions for cussing, so things like hell and damn are going to be considered at the same level. Nudity and stuff like that seems like it's going to be cracked down a little bit more. The truth is, enforcement and rules at YouTube are often miles apart, so unless they're turning over a new leaf and actually telling people what the actual enforcement is, it kind of doesn't matter. And personally, for my own channel, as long as I'm not getting family-friendly style strikes, inappropriate content strikes, I don't see a reason to really change the type of content I'm making in any way, because that is somewhat living on the edge, but you're just always living on the edge with YouTube. So there's Let's see, let's go ahead and activate this again and negate that ability. While we're at it, we'll go ahead and toss out this guy. I suppose if I started to have 1,000 subscribers and got in the YouTube Partner Program again, then I might pay more attention to the content guidelines. Inherently, I think this is part of where YouTube drops the ball too, is because since they are being cheap and not paying a lot of content creators anything, a lot of content creators can certainly make channels and go, well, screw YouTube, I'm never going to get a dime directly from them anyway, so let me just do whatever I want to do and ask for Patreon stuff anyways. Patreon donations. Let's see. The new game from the makers, or from Harvester Games, which I think in this case this is the makers of the Cat Lady series, is out. It's called Burnhouse Lane. It definitely looks like the Cat Lady games, although in all fairness, the series is actually called The Devil Came Through Here. It was called The Devil Came Through Here Trilogy, but I guess it's now a quadrilogy. There was definitely slow progress on these games in that they are basically horror point-and-click adventures. Interestingly, yeah, Cat Lady came out in 2012. Downfall was re-released, even though it was originally released before the Cat Lady in 2016, but it's also kind of a prequel / sequel to the Cat Lady. And then Lorelei came out in 2019, and each one I was less enthusiastic about. Maybe it was something in 2012 that really caught my attention that made me love the Cat Lady, but I just kind of think the Cat Lady was actually just better written too compared to Downfall and Lorelei. I would, despite the Cat Lady being the most difficult to play since it's keyboard only, not even mouse, I would be much more likely to play the Cat Lady a second time than try and go back and play Downfall or Lorelei. There are slightly different endings in each of the game, but I would probably need a walkthrough to get any specific ending if I really wanted that, and I just don't feel like I'd probably go down that direction. Well, if I draw the right card, I potentially can still win here. The Callisto Protocol came out to probably less fanfare than I would have expected, and I've seen one YouTuber's opinion, who I kind of trust, review it, and he's not particularly enthusiastic about it. And in particular, he said the PC port was not particularly good. Overall, we're seeing a top average critic on Metacritic here, or OpenCritic here, at 76, and 68% of critics recommending it. So it doesn't seem like it's absolute garbage, GameSpot being kind of an outlier, which is interesting because it's Game Informer giving it a 6 out of 10 after Game Informer doing a whole magazine around the Callisto Protocol, which, yeah, I guess that's the awkwardness of both advertising and than reviewing games. In a lot of ways, from what I saw as far as the online review, didn't succeed there, but whatever. Generally, I just need to play to get the battle pass continue to going forward. Yeah, looking at the review that I saw, the Callisto Protocol feels way too much like a worse version of Dead Space, and as much as I've tried to strongman the Callisto Protocol and give it every single benefit of the doubt that it would hopefully have been a good game, it seems like the lasting positive thing that the Callisto Protocol may do is actually just force EA to remake and re-release Dead Space, because I don't think, unless there's major improvements to the game, that you would see a Callisto Protocol 2, and I don't think Callisto Protocol has anything in it that would make you want to see a Callisto Protocol 2. It seems like there's less variety of enemies, at least visually, and everything definitely just feels like we ripped off Dead Space without doing anything different or much different from Dead Space. So yeah, it's a shame. I was hoping it would have been much more of an experience. I did do some research after the last stream just to double check that the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, Texas was still open. It is. They apparently just hadn't tweeted in a while. But they did tweet here saying that today we remember our friend, the late Jerry Lawson, one of the most influential names in early video game industry. Jerry created the game cartridges as we know them, changing the way games were created and sold, and helped to grow the industry measurably. Thank you, Jerry. So, yeah. And I guess the last thing they tweeted was this YouTube video of Moon Jelly / Space Jelly on November 20th. So, yeah, it had been about 11 days since they last tweeted. They don't tweet that much anyway, so I was getting a little concerned there. And certainly that is the case for any kind of museum at all. Like, there was a quote-unquote pinball museum in California that ran out of funding and shut itself down about 6 months ago, I would say. And that was pretty much out of the blue. Although in all fairness, that one claimed to be a museum when really it was more just a very nice collection of pinball games for people to play. Although in all fairness, I think a lot of the National Video Game Museum displays are also very kid-friendly in the sense that you can go up and touch things. None of this stuff is trying to be held behind glass and preserved for longer periods of time. Perhaps there's an argument that they should take those kinds of measures. Although a lot of the video game stuff too, you can have a fake version that kids can touch and that's out for display, and you can have the real version hidden away in the archives. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case for a lot of the paintings and sculptures in museums, is that they are secretly not the original versions and they're just copies that are on display. And I guess at a certain level there is a theological argument as to whether a museum should be a collection that preserves things or a museum should be a educational place where people can go and see things and enjoy art, art or scientific things like dinosaur bones, and on a lot of levels, the things that are on display, and the reason things are on display in museums is just to fundraise to support the museums. In the turn there. Okay, let's start going through the news because we went fairly long last stream. Microsoft's merger with Activision has been cleared unconditionally in Serbia. The deal has now been approved in Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and Serbia. I'm still not really sure why those countries were involved in the first place. Is there a Serbian office that Activision Blizzard has, or some subsidiary in Serbia? That would be the reason I would assume that it is. If you were a country that invested in Activision Blizzard, is there possibly some laws you could pass that would require more control over the company by investing in the company? I don't think you could really do that. You could try as a country to pass a law saying, hey, if we own a part of a company in the United States, this United States-based company has to follow our laws too. But I would think even if some country like Saudi Arabia tried to pass a law like that, you would then probably just end up saying, no, forget it. We'll just stop doing business in your country and deal with it that way. Or we won't accept your investment or purchase of our shares or stocks. This guy, I think, is playing the deck that's going to eat this character, so is there a good reason to activate this now? Probably. How can I have 11 other cards and not a single one of them worked? Definitely does seem like, though, as far as the Activision Blizzard merger, that Microsoft is not having any trouble getting approval in the smaller countries. Or it is seemingly only Britain, Europe, and the United States that might have trouble, or at least are implying that they have trouble, might have trouble. And I guess a lot of these Video Games Chronicle articles might be old, because we never have really addressed that issue. One of these characters, maybe not one of these two on the screen, but one of the characters in this game I also heard was barely in the game. Let's see, yeah, we already talked about Warzone Caldera, that's old. Already talked about that. December's PlayStation Plus Essential Games being leaked. I already talked about. Games with gold titles being announced. I think, wait, I already talked about that. I already talked about that. I already talked about that. Let's see. I haven't heard anybody really say anything about the Mario Brothers second movie trailer, but I'm not really listening to anybody. I did try to listen to Jeff Gerstmann's most recent Jeff Gerstmann podcast show. He still seems completely inept at running a podcast and streaming himself, considering how he technically was supposed to have been in charge of Giant Bomb that whole time. And I can't help but think that that mostly means that he was in meetings with upper management that whole time and never really learned how to run streaming software or do anything. And on his own, I just don't think he's that interesting to listen to. And I'm not sure if he ever was that interesting to listen to on his own. But I have managed to stay away from listening to Giant Bomb in the past couple of weeks, maybe even a month now, so I'm happy about that. I did see one major anti-SJW post, anti-SJW person who is just kind of irate against anything that would even be slightly perceived as woke, complaining about how this trailer for the Super Mario Bros. Movie seems to be too feminist, raw feminist, with Princess Peach seeming to take a major front lead in the trailer. And I could see the movie potentially being that, but I would withhold judgment or criticism until the actual movie comes out, because at a certain level, I can't really agree with the idea that Princess Peach should be a damsel in distress in any Mario content anymore. I think fans of the Mario series really responded well to the idea at the end of Mario Odyssey, where Princess Peach just refuses to be this love interest plaything that Mario and Bowser are fighting over at the end of the game, and decides to be a more strong, independent woman. I think as a character, that's what I want to see from her, and that's what they seem to want to do with her, to make her more of a character in the first place. And particularly in the movie, that would be a great time to set her up as a better female role model than she has been in the past, where even if she is a princess, she's basically a princess because of her bloodline, unless the movie wants to say something different there. And she does seem to not really make any royal decisions or show any level of authority or an intelligence in that. But I could also see the Mario movie being called the Mario movie, and then Mario being only in 5 minutes of the movie, which, if that was the case, that would be a little irritating, particularly the young kids. And this is going to be a kids movie first and foremost, so it kind of has to appeal to kids, both little boys and little girls. And so it can't be this just completely flooded with woke writing. I don't think that would play well. It is also worth pointing out that I seriously doubt Nintendo of Japan, who is in charge of everything Nintendo, is going to potentially let a Mario movie come out where Mario is not very prominent and obviously the hero. But these are old, let's face it, set in the 50s sexism mentality Japanese people, so Japanese men that are running Nintendo, so that they're not just gonna embrace any real change. So I would say it is way too early to have any real concern with the Mario movie. It's much more realistic to be concerned about bad voice acting, which nobody seems to be talking about that in the second trailer, so I suspect maybe Mario doesn't even speak in the second trailer. And inherently you're going to run into a problem with the Mario movie too, just being kind of directionless. It's probably going to be a very simplistic kids movie. Yeah, and we're still just going through old news here. The major Smash Bros. Tournament being shut down by Nintendo. Final Fantasy 16 being raided in Brazil. Spanish theme park is building an Uncharted roller coaster. Streets of Rage composer Yuzo Koshihiro working on a new Mega Drive game. December is free games with Amazon Prime. December's PlayStation Plus games. Yeah, this is all just old news. Let's see. Let's go ahead and cancel this with that one. The Callisto Protocol, darn it, I didn't think that was going to work. I should have used Zeus. The Callisto Protocol is going to add a new Game Plus in February, but to not have new Game Plus on day one is kind of ridiculous. I'm already yawning, and I really don't have an excuse for yawning. I really wore out my thumb playing the Vagrant in the final boss battle, which I died in the final boss battle multiple times, and the boss battle has like, I would say it has somewhere around 10 stages where you either switch in, an enemy either switches to a different mode, or you fight a different enemy completely, or they fight a different way. That's what I mean by mode. And you have to beat them all in a row in the final boss battle with no checkpoint. So I died like 4 or 5 times, and the only thing I really did to succeed is to just pay really close attention to my health and drink a lot of potions to refill my health. It was very frustrating. Let's see. Free Sonic Frontiers DLC will include new story content and playable characters, which I guess it's nice that it's free content, but it does just further build into the idea that games these days are not getting released as full products and instead are being released as unfinished products that you have to just hope get better after time. It is also kind of worth mentioning that the Callisto Protocol is basically the only AAA game, I guess you'd call it a AAA game, that's come out in a very long time. Like, part of the reason why I've been able to stop listening to Giant Bomb as a source, even though I for months was trying to stop listening to it and failing at that. But part of the reason I was able to do that is that there was just no games even coming out. So that made for an easy breakup. Let's see. The hero-based racing game Disney Speedstorm has been delayed. The Disney Pixar game has slipped from this year to 2023. I think we had already covered that. I'm not sure I particularly remember that Disney Speedstorm had even been announced. Okay. So, set that there and in the turn. Let's see. Machine Games Indiana Jones title is a unique genre mashup, says Todd Howard. Todd Howard was interviewed, and anytime he's interviewed, you get a whole bunch of quote mines from him, because he seems to talk a lot and let a lot slip, even if what he's saying is not particularly accurate. The Valve News Network guy, who doesn't really go by that name anymore, did a kind of joking post where he said he could not find any evidence that Todd Howard was actually in the chess club, even though he claimed to be in the chess club in high school. Which, yeah, somebody lying and saying they were in the chess club doesn't really matter. Like, in general, I would kind of hope that Todd Howard isn't actually that much in charge anymore of Bethesda, but I think he probably is more in charge than I would think. Let's see, well, negate the effects of all face-up monsters that are face-up on the field, but they can still activate their effects. So if I was to instead toss that, I don't know if that's really going to help me any. They also put out the trailer for Indiana Jones 5, which has to be the last Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford, I would assume. So I imagine they're trying to release this game somewhat in line with Indiana Jones 5. But hopefully it is more of a standalone experience. It looks like the movie trailer is going to have Indiana Jones finally come to terms with all the magic and mysticism he's seen, while probably ignoring the crystal skull. What that really means, I don't know. Kind of the problem there is, if you were to try to make a spin-off series with a new granddaughter character from the Indiana Jones movie, is you have to kind of admit that the world of Indiana Jones is a very magical world indeed, and with that you're going to have to just say every rumor, every magical thing is going to be a part of that. See, part of the problem here, you activate this, you toss this, you try to destroy that, it's gonna go no, can't do it. So unless which means this character also, and his ability is not going to work. So my best case scenario here is that this guy can destroy this, which you can't. This one can't directly attack. So then that leaves you with potentially summoning this. And I don't think that's going to work either. Yeah, here's the teaser trailer for the Indiana Jones Machine / Bethesda Games release. Now, part of the question here is, I guess id Software was made Doom Eternal, and so the whole controversy about id Software really screwing up the soundtrack and then blaming the composer, that seems like that has died down. Each has had their own say, and it's probably going to end up in lawsuits. It doesn't seem like anybody is that interested in throwing barbs back and forth or more mudslinging. But yeah, that teaser trailer is just a teaser. I definitely hope it's a game that feels a lot like Fate of Atlantis. I don't know if an Indiana Jones game needs to really be a 3D game or benefits from being a 3D game. The danger certainly in any Indiana Jones game is that you're going to turn it into a first-person shooter, and that's just not really Indiana Jones, because he hates guns, in case people forget. So you would hope that they would remember that and not turn it into a first-person shooter or a first-person whipper where you're just whipping a bunch of people, and that it would be more about having conversations and solving puzzles, which is what we think of for the most part when we do think of Indiana Jones, at least in video game form. In a lot of ways, if they straight up said they were just going to make Fate of Atlantis and animate it better and have voice acting in it, I would have probably been happy with that announcement too. I kind of wish I could think what Machine Games worked on before this. They've done something, I know, but I don't know if it was Prey or if it was something else. But I guess that is that is also, I'm losing my train of thought here. I suppose it's better to have an Indiana Jones game than not to have an Indiana Jones game, so I can't really complain about that. I wish there was more Indiana Jones games, but overall, even though that's kind of a big name for a game, it is also an example of an announcement being way too early and just there being no real actions you can take as a consumer around the announcement of an Indiana Jones game. You are in this dangerous position where another Indiana Jones movie comes out and it flops, and then it makes less people want to play the video game, or the video game comes out and it's bad, or even Harrison Ford himself dies or causes controversy before the game comes out. Starford director says Xbox exclusivity is awesome, but he's feeling the pressure to sell consoles. Todd Howard discusses how expectations have changed since Microsoft acquired Bethesda. Yeah. Starfield is not out yet, so yeah. This is, personally, in my opinion, good news, though. If Todd Howard feels like he actually has to release games and sell consoles for Microsoft, that's probably some pressure Todd Howard really needs, and Bethesda in general really needs, instead of just sitting on a cash pile of money and releasing yet another new version of Skyrim and then taking another decade off as far as producing any other content. Alright, let's do this. Discard this from my hand. Do this one. And let's just get rid of this one too. Alright, my hope here is now I can summon this, activate this finally, bring out this, and I don't want to screw around. Just gonna go straight for the jugular. Activate this. Banish that. Want to do anything else? I guess I do hope Starfield is good when it comes out, but so far what I've seen of Starfield has not been very impressive. And they've announced it way too early for modern release schedules of video games. Nintendo, this is kind of shocking, has apparently formally apologized to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet performance, and they've formally apologized for Pokemon's Scarlet and Violet performance and pledges improvements. The game has faced online backlash due to poor performance since launch. This is almost a complete 180 around the statement they put out as far as hardware warranty and repairs in Japan, where they said if you're rude to the staff, they may void your warranty. which that seemed like that was a crazy thing for a Japanese company to say out loud and make a public statement on that. But clearly they weren't going to get away with just going there's a bunch of trolls online and a bunch of people just complaining for no reason around Scarlet and Violet. Everybody that's played the game seems to be on the exact same agreement that it is bad. Now, the thing to ask here certainly is how much is it going to improve and how much does it have to improve, because there's definitely a believable scenario where they fix half of the bugs and yet the game is still kind of bad and still kind of buggy, and then they say forget it, we've done as much as we're willing to do. And inherently, even if they fixed all the bugs, I don't know if that's even then would make Pokemon Scarlet and Violet particularly a good Pokemon game. Anyways, because I don't think the core content components are even that good. Okay. We're gonna see if I can... I can't really do anything here, can I? This should be the last game we play on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Let's see. Street Fighter 6 second closed beta test will take place this month, according to Video Games Chronicles. If you want to check that out. Game Freak, the makers of the Pokemon games, have registered a trademark for a potential new pocket card jockey game. I'm just activating spells for no reason. It definitely feels like, since we're in a new season now, that we are struggling with a lot of people who are actually good players. But then we are also running into some quick disconnects and quick victories. What did not happen here in about an hour of gameplay is we didn't rush all the way up to Gold 1 or anything like that. And on Wednesday we had opened a bunch of secret packs, but this new secret pack is the only thing left from that. Go ahead and purchase 10 of these legacy packs. And yeah, we're still getting cards. It would be interesting, I guess, if they changed how these happened and all of these cards were always going to be new. Or cards that you at least don't have 3 copies of first. But I don't think that's the way it's going. Okay, well, I got all of these, so clearly XYZ Synchro or Ritual summons did happen. So I guess the other daily quest probably would also happen. Yeah, my sleep schedule is still very much a mess because I am still taking naps and then waking up and 4 hours later, and I'm just not anywhere close to sleeping for 8 hours and then staying awake for 16 hours and then sleeping for another 8 hours. A pocket card jockey game is not a game I recognize, so I don't know if these games have ever been released in the West. But yeah, at this point we kind of know Game Freak is a bad game developer, in that the Pokemon game series really needs to just be licensed out to a third-party company. Disney Dreamlight Valley's Toy Story update will also add Stitch and non-playable character outfits. So Dreamlight Valley, I think, is sticking around a little bit more than it might have, because it is possible that this, in its kind of weird early status, would have just fizzled out. But I do think there is a fan base of Disney adults that are playing Disney Dreamlight Valley. Noticeably, though, it's either not on Steam or I've just totally missed it. Yeah. Let's see. Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is coming to Xbox Game Pass pretty quickly, too. And I'm not 100% sure. I believe with Warner Brothers that there are going to be as many TT game Lego games, or any potentially future TT Lego games. This may very well be the last Lego game made by TT Games, and maybe we'll see a new generation of Lego games that are more interesting, or maybe it'll just take a break and make different kinds of games for a while. At a certain level, TT Games could make a game very much like Lego Star Wars, without the Lego part and without the Star Wars part. And it could be still a very interesting kids video game if you've got that co-op going, if you've got the beating things up and getting coins instead of Lego bricks, I guess, if you're gonna not Legofy it. If you've got interesting, funny characters and dialogue, which sometimes they have that in Lego games, and good level design, which they usually have that. Yeah, you could make a non-Lego Lego game and sell it. Yeah. See, Tekken 8 will reportedly be shown at the Game Awards, according to Video Games Chronicles. Oh, yeah. Xbox Game Pass titles for console and PC and cloud have been dated. That includes Lego Star Wars, The Skywalker Saga, Eastworld, High on Life, and Hello Neighbors 2. I thought High on Life was still in early access, but I guess maybe I'm wrong about that. Several games here in this list are also leaving. I guess this is the right time, certainly, for games to be added to Xbox Game Pass, though, right before Christmas. See, Nintendo Switch and Xbox Series X and S dominated the UK Black Friday console sales, which is a sad statement to the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. Maybe there wasn't that much availability for PlayStations in the UK, but maybe there's just not a lot that UK players want to play on the PlayStation 4 or 5 also. The Darkness Chronicles of Riddick director joins the Indiana Jones team. Jens Anderson previously worked on LucasArts on another cancelled Indiana Jones game, which at a certain point, what has Jens Anderson been doing since then? Because if they worked at LucasArts, did they then move over to Double Fine, and now they're moving over to Machine Games? Since Microsoft owns both Double Fine and Machine Games. Um, he was previously the art director for the Wolfenstein games. So he was working on the Wolfenstein games. I kind of question where Wolfenstein 3 is at this point too. It feels like we should be getting some more announcements too. But in a lot of ways, that is also just information that really doesn't mean anything. It would be much more exciting if Jens Anderson was the person who worked on Indiana Jones and Fate of Atlantis or Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which maybe he worked on those games, but maybe he didn't. And at a certain level, too, while Fate of Atlantis is a good game and an interesting game, there's nothing amazing in the programming or the animation or the sound of Fate of Atlantis. It's just too old of a game to say anything like that. So, unless he's going to be the art director that makes it look like a game from the early 80s, which would make it harder to sell, I don't know if he's really going to add anything. A canceled Indiana Jones game could have been anything. Todd Howard also said he's, quote, in love with an unannounced mobile game that Bethesda is developing. It seemingly targets younger players who use mobile devices for lengthy play sessions, which I guess maybe Todd Howard's mentality is somewhat in line with that, is the implication. I think most Bethesda fans, if there are any Bethesda fans left though, are not happy with the idea that yet another mobile game is being developed by Bethesda. But it sounds like it's happening whether people want it or not. And this may be one of the... I think they at some point said somewhere around 11 mobile games were in development at Bethesda before it was acquired. So this may have just been one that actually is going to get released and the other 10 may be canceled, which would be for the better. There is also a real possibility, if Microsoft is going to go all in on having its own mobile app store, that it has all of its companies as it's acquired thinking about making mobile games. And while a company like Double Fine probably would do a decent job making a mobile game, I don't really think most of the Bethesda team should be working on a mobile game, or any of the Bethesda teams should really be working on it. And I don't think most of the companies that Microsoft owns should really be making mobile games. Let's see. Star Wars Battlefront 2 for PSP looks to be joining the PlayStation Plus Classics library. Check out this article, I guess, if you want more information. The next free Epic Games Store titles have been announced. They will be Saints Row 4 Re-Elected and Wildcat Gun Machine, which Saints Row 4 Re-Elected, I assume, is a remaster of Saints Row 4. And Wildcat Gun Machine is some weird game I've never heard of. Monster Hunter Rise is officially coming to the PlayStation, Xbox, and Game Pass. Capcom's game is making the jump to new platforms in 2023. I think the Rise series so far has only been on like the 3DS or the Switch. Yeah, it was originally released for the Switch on March of 2021, and it was released on PC in January 2022. But PC maybe doesn't mean Steam? Because I'm not seeing a Steam link, but maybe it does. Hideo Kojima has further teased his next game with new logos. I guess check that out if you're interested. And I think at a certain point we are going to... I may have to take a break here. Krafton stocks takes a dip as Callisto Protocol launches to mid-70s reviews. Krafton, I guess being the company. The South Korean company is the owner of the developer Striking Distance Studios. This might very well have been a case where, because it's a South Korean company, they just didn't put enough publishing and development funding into it, and had this game been released a little delayed a little bit, polished a little bit more, it might have been better. I believe it's this character that doesn't really stay around for very long, is what I saw in the review. And I think this character is like voice acted by the same character who plays Starkiller in The Force Unleashed, the main character, the main protagonist in The Force Unleashed. Yeah, I could see that similarity in the face. Modern Warfare 2's delayed competitive multiplayer playlist is now live, if you're interested in that. A Banjo-Kazooie Donkey Kong composer has released a Christmas song. A Video Game Christmas by Grant Kirkhope and David Wise is out now. Which, okay. I guess listen to that if you want to. I'll see if I can listen to that and maybe talk about it on Monday. Although I don't know what I really would like or care about a Christmas song from video game composers in general. Some of the PlayStation Classics have finally been updated to 60 Hz in Europe. The features looks to improve the speed of some games in the PlayStation Classics collection. This is a Europe, UK only problem, so most people wouldn't have never run into that issue. A Warzone 2 skin dubbed the Rose 2.0 is currently one of Steam's best-selling products. I suspect that's probably because it is mostly black and it possibly improves your ratio of being hit, or your dodge ratio of not being hit. So the Steam store, the Steam store still making a lot of money for Valve, I guess, for the people who are engaging with it, while most people probably aren't engaging with it. The original Rose skin was controversial for making players difficult to spot, and so, yeah, that's why they're calling this Rose 2.0, is because it is just another stealth suit equivalent. Hidetake Miyazaki says he's trying not to get distracted by Elden Ring's success, which is an interesting, humble Japanese way of potentially bragging. But yeah, it's probably the right attitude even if you're just bragging or being overly humble outside, is that Elden Ring's creators and have made a very good game, so now they've raised the bar very much to a higher level for their next game, and you can never really disappoint the fans or lower expectations. So in Elden Ring 2 or whatever the next game you make is, it's got to feel as good as Elden Ring, or people are going to complain or at least be disappointed. Let's see. The Callisto Protocol DLC roadmap includes new story content in the summer of 2023. A new Game Plus and Hardcore modes will be released for all players in February. Which, yeah, Hardcore mode and New Game Plus really should have been in the game to begin with. You know, one thing that Callisto Protocol might show, since Krafton is a South Korean company, is that this may very well be somewhat in the level of quality to expect from the Shift Up game. What I think at one time it was called Project Eve, but they may have changed the name since then, or maybe that is the new name. I wouldn't be surprised if as Korean companies start to try to be AAA game developers, they stumble somewhat, just not having the funding and just not having the experience. That being said, I would say South Korean game companies, with the Callisto Protocol as an example, still seem like they are miles ahead of Chinese game developers, and at a certain level, like Filipino and Taiwanese game companies are not even trying to make AAA games yet, probably because they don't have the resources. And it may very well be a case where it just can never really balance out because there may just be so much more funding for companies in the West compared to Asian companies that have to work on in different economies on different budgets at different scales, targeting different audiences. It would be weird, certainly, if a game like the Callisto Protocol was then acquired and then remastered and re-released by a different company, but we've seen some of that happen. Bulletstorm was acquired by Gearbox, and then they re-released it as a remaster and really didn't put any real improvements around it other than the visuals. I'm not sure if there's another company I could think of where there's an example quite like that, though. 505 Games and Epic Games have launched a teaser site for Game Awards reveal, which is, I guess, an announcement for an announcement, really. And then there's this bookmarked sponsored content article we don't need to talk about from Video Games Chronicles. And then we're at the Gematsu articles. Shredder's coming to PS5 on December 6th. An action creature collecting game called Adore is coming to the Xbox One, Xbox Series, PS4, PS5, and Switch. See if we can get a general idea of what it looks like. Looks like it is kind of a top-down hack and slash game, but apparently with some creature collecting element to it also. At a certain level, perhaps this is what the Pokemon game should have been. Something more zoomed out, something from a more top-down perspective, instead of trying to be an over-the-shoulder perspective and so 3D and so detailed. Had Pokemon Scarlet and Violet been the first step towards going 3D and they walked before running, probably would have avoided a lot of the bugginess. I have no idea what the pop-up bar there is saying. The PlayStation Plus monthly games lineup, we don't need to talk about that again. A game called Koa and the Five Pirates of Mara has been delayed to 2023, and it seems like at this point this would be the third game in the Mara series. Because there was already a game called Summer in Mara, I believe. Unless I'm confusing myself, there might only be two Mara games and another game that looks almost exactly the same. As far as Koa and the Five Pirates of Mara, that's the first I've heard of this. And I'm actually very shocked to see like flat 2D animation in the trailer at all, since that's not really what this game is likely to be. In a lot of ways, what I would like to see is the Mara series be what A Hat in Time kind of failed to be, which is a potential Mario 64 competitor on PC, where A Hat in Time came out and it just wasn't really polished enough and it wasn't really focused enough to be a Mario 64 competitor, and they didn't make any more content around the Hat in Time and Hat Girl, which they should have, certainly, if they were going to play that way. Let's see, Sonic Frontiers free updates roadmap. Here, if you want to actually check out the picture. Apparently they're going to give him a Santa outfit. Check that out on Komatsu if you're interested. Disney Speedstorm being delayed, we already covered. Persona 5 Royale shipments and digital sales have topped 1 million for new platforms and 3.3 million if you include the PlayStation 4. Which, those numbers are big certainly, but perhaps not as big as I may have thought at one time. I would have thought that Persona 5 Royale specifically would have sold closer to 10 million by now, but I guess it is still just a niche game. Street Fighter 6 second closed beta test set for December 16th through 19th, we already covered that. A game called Gizoku Tantai no Suri has details their systems and bonus modes. Is this a adventure visual novel or puzzle game? Looks like it's ninja girls of some sort, but I'm not really sure what the actual gameplay mechanics are here. It seems like there are items, seems like you talk to people, but I'm not sure there's anything more to it than that. Is it just a gacha collectible game? And that's just all the screenshots you see. I guess they're just saying it's a visual novel, just straight up a visual novel. And perhaps there is a statement on the direction the visual novels are going, in that there are actual items you're collecting here, and these characters are sometimes in 3D in a visual novel. A little inconsistent there to have flat animation and non-flat animation, but does kind of seem like there's just a little bit more polish in this visual novel attempt series in this game. Moving on. Borderlands 3 has been rated for the Switch in Europe, which I wonder if that's going to be a streaming version of the game, or if it is all actually going to run on the Nintendo Switch. I wouldn't be surprised if it has to be a streaming game, as the Switch is just getting older and older. Winning Post 10 has its first details and screenshots, which, yeah, if this actually comes to the West, I would definitely like to play it. It would give me an interesting excuse and a nice round number as far as playing the 10th game in the series, but I suspect it probably won't come to the West. And even if it did, I'd probably only play it for an hour or two and then get bored with it. Unless there really is more of a horse racing simulator concept in the game, which I don't know if there really is. Maybe there is some horse breeding, horse racing going on here. There seems to be some characters that stand out, whereas I would have kind of assumed all the characters would have just been like these guys, generic male anime guy, or don't even show the face anime guy. Let's see, the Famitsu sales have been updated for the week of 11/21 through 11/27. Let's see if anything is new. Well, the update seems to start at the 19th position with a game called Amori on the Switch, and then Gungrave Gore for the PS4 and PS5, and Konosuba God's Blessing on the Nintendo Switch. Hardware sales nearly topped 100,000 for the Switch OLED model, the PS5 nearly topping 50,000 if we round it up. And then Xbox Series S doing pretty decently too. Even the Series X and the PlayStation 4 doing pretty good. Weirdly, these numbers definitely feel way higher by like a factor of 10, if not a factor of 100 on some of these low level ones than normally. So apparently Black Friday as a sale seems to have really affected Japan too, because there was a lot of shopping for consoles that week. A game called Eastward is now available on the Xbox One. It first launched for Switch and PC in September of 2021. I'm not sure it's really a game that I'd be super enthusiastic about playing. Yeah. Let's see if we can find the Steam page and see where it stood. Yeah, it is on my wish list. It is rated very positively. So at some point I did decide to put this on the wish list. There's definitely a problem where this could be a Zelda-like game, adventure, or this could just be an RPG Maker garbage game. And it's sometimes hard to tell the difference visually. Like a Dragon Ishin combat trailer and screenshots are available if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. We already talked about the Game Pass adding games. Yeah, that game Eastward coming to Game Pass. Vengeful Guardian Moonrider launches January 12th, 2023. A roguelike action game, Flamekeeper, has been announced for the PS4, PS5, Xbox Series, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Which, I guess, you're trying to keep the flame. These screenshots not doing a particularly great job of zooming in and showing me what you actually would be doing. And maybe this trailer would explain it better. So it seems like you are made of flame, and then there is a giant amount of flame that you're also trying to keep alive in a fire pit. Otherwise, it seems like it is kind of a top-down hack and slash game where you're doing a kind of reverse tower defense in that you're protecting a tower in the sense of the fire pit instead of being attacked by towers or using towers to attack. Moving on, a narrative puzzle game called The Forest Quartet launches December 8th for the PS4, PS5, and PC. Which, yeah, we really don't have time for every single trailer, but this does look somewhat intriguing, and I'll leave it at that. A game called Guardian Life launches in early access for PC in spring of 2023. That would be a tough sell, certainly, to me, to have a garden game. And I question whether gardeners, real people who garden, would appreciate a virtual garden concept. And I just don't know if there's any other gameplay here. My first instinct on any game where you would like garden is that you would be growing plants in nurseries to sell the plants to get currency to then grow bigger plants, and that there would be not a main focus really on decorating. Neon White is coming to the PS4 and PS5 on December 13th if you want to check that out. 505 Games launches a Visit Rockay City teaser website for a new title to be announced at the Game Awards. Rockay, R-O-C-K-A-Y. which honestly I just don't care enough to be teased around an announcement of some game we've never even heard of. Like the Game Awards are going to happen fairly soon. Just wait until you get some real details. Summer Game Fest 2023 live kickoff show is set for June 8th, 2023. So that's somewhat far away. Amnesia the Bunker has been announced for Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. This is a semi-open world survival horror game, I guess set in the Amnesia universe. Probably a little too late, considering I haven't heard anybody say anything about the game Amnesia in at least a year, if not 2 or 3. Sky Children of Light for the PS4 launches December 6th. We're getting a lot of announcements for launch dates that are either before Christmas, but maybe too late because they're past Black Friday, or after Christmas and into 2023. PlayStation Plus Classics catalog to add Star Wars Battlefront 2 for PSP. We already talked about that. Monster Hunter Rise coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One on January 20th of 2023. We already talked about that too. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R free DLC character Weather Forecast and Father Pucci Final is now available. So, yeah. I guess it's been a while since we've had any new DLC characters for this JoJo's Bizarre game. I feel like the last time we announced anything from that was probably at least a month ago. And then Disney Speedstorm has a CGI trailer after its delays. I guess the question is, who is this character and who is this character? Like, obviously I can recognize a Mickey character here and a Pixar character here. So are these supposed to be, is this supposed to be like Mulan? And is this supposed to be somebody else? Or are they adding new humanoid characters to the game? Seems like the general idea is that it is an arcade connecting everything. So maybe that is supposed to be Mulan. Oh, that's Captain Jack Sparrow. Now that I'm more zoomed in on it. Okay. It's kind of funny that Mulan would be your pick as far as a potential Disney princess. I guess Mulan is one of the few Disney princesses who actively engages in anything and does anything, whereas most Disney princesses are trapped in a tower and have to be rescued. Plus, Mulan might be a blatant attempt to sell the game in China, sell the game in Asia more. I mean, that's pretty much the only reason Mulan as a movie succeeded. Picking Mulan also, though, highlights how Disney has not bothered to make any new animated characters in a very long time. Notably here, what they're not promoting is the live action characters or the CGI characters. They're not going for any of that. And yeah, what they're not going for like Black Ariel either in live action. So that whole drama hasn't been mentioned for a while. People moved on to other things to complain about, I suppose. Let's see, the PlayStation Partner Awards for 2022 Japan Asia winners have been announced. Which, let's see, the Grand Award was given to Elden Ring and Genshin Impact. Is Genshin Impact even on the PlayStation? I guess maybe it is. Partner Awards for Demon Slayer, Final Fantasy XIV, Mobile Slayer, Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2, Resident Evil Village, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel Special Award to Apex Legends, which that's potentially the only non-Japanese made game in the list. And then a Gran Turismo, which is made by Sony of California, it seems like, but Sony still probably giving themselves an award or wanting an award just to save face. User Choice Awards, very different choices here in that they included Earth Defense Force 6, Elden Ring, Ghostwire Tokyo, which I really should play that game fairly quickly, Strangers of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, and Stray. So more Western games here and games that didn't get awards from the judges. That all being said, PlayStation giving out awards to people who only are partners with them limits how many people could have gotten an award in the first place, and then limiting it again to the Japan Asia areas also limits your selection. And it really is just patting yourself on the back more than anything else. Digimon Survive shipments and digital sales of top 500,000, despite it being mostly a visual novel and not that good. That probably is a great statement of just how much Digimon still will sell. And it's probably not the best situation because it will just further encourage Bandai Namco to put out bad games. Like, I seriously doubt Bandai is going to now take this 500,000 sales and go, okay, so Digimon's still popular, let's make a better Digimon game and continue with releases of Digimon games. They'll probably make more Digimon games, but they'll probably be as bad as Digimon Survive was. Although it is also slightly possible that the visual novel strategy RPG elements that Digimon Survive has actually did sell fairly well, or was fairly well received by Japanese audiences, and it was just not well received by the Western audiences. Which is a shame, because I really wanted to play this game until I saw the reviews, but I lost all interest after I started to see some reviews. Maybe I shouldn't be trusting the reviews. That's very believable too. And then our final Gametsu article, Loop 8 Summer of Gods, English gameplay trailer and screenshots are available. This looks like this is possibly a game I've seen before, but they all kind of mix together. Part visual novel with 3D or live 2D animations. And then the actual gameplay feels like it is somewhat Persona style in an RPG fighting elements. And it looks like you're also going to get some cutscenes that are 2D. It's definitely a weird situation to be put in, where something like Loop 8 here might be particularly good, or it might just be good enough and not as long as something like Persona 5 Royale. So I potentially could see myself playing Loop 8 just because it would be a one and done story, whereas if I was going to play the Persona series, there would be this pressure to play all the Persona games, or at least play Persona 3, then 4, then 5. Alright, and so it's Friday, and so we very possibly are going to have more bundling as far as adult games, and the very first game we have here is Hentai Devil Girl, which is just a slide puzzle with a single flat 2D colorful anime girl with big boobs in different poses and different states of undress. And it's 59 cents. It says as full language support for every language that Steam supports, and that it supports every language that Steam supports, all 100 plus of them. And that is unbelievable, certainly. So nothing there, but I will say at 59 cents, they aren't asking for a lot. That being said, you can get porn on the internet for free. So why even pay the 59 cents to get a garbage tile sliding puzzle game? We have a game here that looks like garbage. And let's see. This one may not actually be adult content. Yeah. This is the Pretty Girls series from Zoo Corporation with Pretty Girls 2048 Strike. It looks like it would have nudity in it, the Pretty Girls series, but it really only has scantily clad lewd images at most. It is weird that the Zoo series goes in that mushy middle, and I can't help but assume that maybe there is some kind of mod for their series of games that under the Pretty Girl series that would show some nudity. But even if it did show nudity, I mean, you're still just playing 2048, so it's not something that I think I could bother to put on the follow list. At a certain level, though, if I did want to play 2048 and I was obsessed with seeing anime girls on the side, that's what this is providing, and it is providing that. But I don't think you really need to mix your chocolate and your peanut butter together like that. I think you're better off simply just playing a good 2048 game, probably on your cell phone for free. And then whenever you want to see anime girls in lewd outfits, you can just go online to see that. Yep. Underworld Island here is a full motion video game, it looks like, with some decent makeup for horror. And we really don't see a lot of examples of that where there are horror elements. Feels like this is probably Korean. It's $9.99, full English, full Chinese. Interesting. This is actually a Chinese game. I'd be surprised, but because generally Chinese movie makers, I don't think really go for horror. Well, this is definitely intriguing. Underworld Island. So I'll give it a follow. Now, I guess a good question to ask is, should I make a short around this? Sure, why not? Let's try it. I will say I am also all over the place as far as YouTube shorts are going. Some videos getting 200-300 views, some videos getting no views. It does seem to be very random. I'm gonna give this a follow too because there's a small chance that it's good. And if anything, all I'm learning from the YouTube Shorts experiments is that I should just make more YouTube Shorts. I'll give this a follow too. This a half card game, half miniature figure placement game. Kind of feels like chess, but I don't think it quite is chess. Here we have an adult visual novel in the flat 2D colorful art style, anime art style. Let's see, Princess Cage. Seems mostly focused on one character who, well, two characters maybe, two anime girls. English is not supported, Japanese with full audio only. It's $8.39. There's also gore, confinement, non-consensual sex, self-harm, and suicide warnings. The thing here is that this adult game, I think, is fairly uniquely different in that it does feel like it is actually a visual novel first. It just happens to have a lot of adult content and has ended up in the adult section. It is also pixelated for the Japanese only audience, so there's one screenshot showing genitals being pixelated, which that's the law in Japan, and since this is only being released to a Japanese audience, that's kind of unique, because almost every other adult game on Steam, even if it does have a Japanese audio language support, doesn't do that. Here we have a non-adult visual novel, I would say. There's no mature content really. References to suicide, sexuality, and mental health issues only. It's English only. It's clearly a Western art style. And see, if I was to call this 2D colorful, then I would have to then make the exception to say it definitely doesn't really look like anime, even though it's trying to look like anime. And it's really not that colorful. There's one character with bright red hair colors, but every other color in the background and foreground is fairly natural. But if I was to call this a 2D natural game, that also would be a bad descriptor of what this is. And generally, I would just describe it as ugly. It's just bad proportions, bad angles, just bad drawing in general. But yeah, an ugly Westerner trying to do an anime style and failing miserably. I wonder really if those how to draw anime, how to draw manga books lead to a lot of animators drawing characters that exactly look like this. When you look at the thumbnail here, they look a lot better than they actually do in the game. But yeah. At a certain point, I kind of wish Western animators would either just start tracing and stealing art, or just like tracing is what I mean by stealing there, just to get better, or just make their own art style, because trying to make something look anime and then failing that miserably, you really should just give up at that point, after your first attempt. We have a game called Echo that's already mixed reviewed. Let's see what it looks like. See, this is kind of nice. Feels more pencil sketched as an art style, but the actual game here really looks like it's just an RPG Maker game. I'll give this one a chance and put this on the follow list, but I don't think I'll bother to give this a YouTube short. I am still very confused, frankly, as to which of the YouTube shorts actually succeed and actually which ones catch people's attention and which ones don't. Because there's definitely been some that I thought, oh, people definitely click on this one and definitely check that out, and then people don't click on it and don't check it out. And then there are ones that I would have assumed would have gotten very few views, and they get a lot of views. So I may very well just not be in line with what people looking at YouTube shorts want, which is probably true, because it is probably a bunch of little kids that are watching a lot of my YouTube shorts. Here we have the Callisto Protocol, and we can see it's only 31% positive, so mostly negative. I'm going to make a YouTube short around that and put it on the follow list, but the mob rule seems to have spoken fairly large here. Like, it's a stuttering mess that runs poorly on day one. I will update this if they fix it, and maybe talk about gameplay. The PS5 version also drops frames apparently, but nowhere near as this. Maybe buy that one instead. There's no DLS for NVIDIA users. HDR is broken and doesn't work. Uh, frame sampling rate 2 doesn't help for all for 4K with ray tracing. I think a lot of people definitely were expecting this um, this game to really support a lot of graphic settings when people when very possibly it should have just said, hey, at launch this game is going to be at 1080p experience, and the extra upsampling and all of that is not going to be available until we patch it in later. That would be an interesting thing to do, to release a game and say this game is going to look what it looks like and as we've advertised it, but no better. Instead, people are expecting ray tracing, they're expecting 4K. So potentially, with the exception of the stuttering, which is a problem, and the thought here that you're paying $60 plus another $30 for the season pass, there's also de novo in this game, and so maybe that's causing the stuttering. It's worth mentioning that also. But yeah, there's a small possibility that if I were to purchase this game and try and play it right now, playing it at 1080p, I might run into as much problems. But even on that, I still haven't really heard any praises for what the game actually is. And that's a shame, because I really wanted that to be good. But the good news is I am definitely not an enthusiastic person that gets hyped about games that much. So even if I do try to hope a game is good, I don't go into the realm of insanity and say, I know this game is good, that this company can do no wrong, there's no way it's going to fail. Like, I don't put faith in games. And frankly, anybody that does put faith in video games has just not experienced enough disappointment in video game releases. Speaking of disappointments, we also have Marvel Midnight Suns here at Medium. I did hear somebody talk about this game and say that half of the game is kind of a like visual novel hanging around experience where you're in this household talking to each of the members of these alternate universe Marvel characters, and that the actual gameplay is really only 50% of the game. That being said, the actual gameplay is very much like XCOM, and I wouldn't hate playing the game for the gameplay or the story, but I do have definitely some concerns looking at in-app purchases and not getting good reviews. So now we've seen two kind of major releases that came out past Black Friday, and their disappointments, which I guess this past couple of years have been just generally disappointments. Shrine of the Spirits here looks like it is a mobile gacha game that's been ported to Steam. They're calling it an online PvP MMO. Supports English, Chinese, Russian, and Korean, which that's an interesting combination of languages. Let's see. We have a prologue game that probably, yep. Should I make YouTube shorts around prologues? I think I should, but I'm not going to put prologues on the follow list. Is this an adult game? It feels like this would be an adult game. So it's a visual novel game. It seems to have no adult content in it at all. It's a obvious, just like asset flip CGI models and asset flip backgrounds. There is absolutely nothing impressive for even 79 cents. Nothing would make me want to buy that game. Need for Speed Unbound is being well received, which that's a little bit of a surprise, I suppose. it's a happy surprise, certainly. So, of the 3 kind of big name games that have come out in the past couple of days, Need for Speed Unbound would have not been the one that I would have bet on. Well, Navy combat doesn't probably matter. I don't care about that. This doesn't look like anything of interest. Here we have another adult game called Hopeless, and it looks like it's a nun being blindfolded, and I assume, well, interestingly, this is one of those RPG Maker games. So it seems like in every sequence and every dialogue she's blindfolded. Interesting. She might be blind in general, and the blindfold is to indicate that as a character, this non-character. This game is $11.99. It supports English, Japanese, and Chinese. It says it has sexual language and strong language in the game, but that seems to be it. So I don't know why this is even in the adult section. It says it's a 2D RPG game with no battle. The main objective is to find your way to survive day to day through the exploration of the scenario on the map. Definitely seems like there's not much of a game here. So yeah, it does to me, and there's really not any nudity here, so we can just show it, seem like this is a low effort RPG game that oddly they've either been forced to be in the adult section just because there's a lady in her underwear a couple times here, but it definitely does not feel like it should be in this section. The fact that this supports Chinese makes me lean towards thinking this might be a Chinese company that made it, and that's why there's no like DLC uncensored patch or any adult content just generally. And this is really the mushy middle you kind of don't want to see on Steam or in general in video games, is that you don't want a titillation game or concept of this and then have no payoff. That's very much like the game The Vagrant. It would be incredibly weird if the game The Vagrant was in the adult only section of Steam, because it just shows the character in a bikini. This looks like this is probably a putt-putt game. Yeah, mini golf type game. I'll give it a chance, give it a follow. Here we have some kind of what I would assume is maybe a point and click adventure game, but they're tagging it as a visual novel. There's a lot of pictures here, but no dialogue. But the pictures do look interesting, so we'll give it a chance. $3.39, English only. See what 3 households is. Looks like it is nothing. Rocket Escape. Looks like nothing. Here we have Burnhouse Lane. We already talked about Burnhouse Lane, and obviously I'll give that a follow. Missing Pixels Able Ferrara. This is a VR documentary experience, giving the director a chance to tell a story that would otherwise never be told. Should I do YouTube shorts on VR games? Probably still. It's worth a thought, at least. VR Dinosaur Invasion. It would be a big mistake yeah, we can say no to that. Though, is this an adult game? Nonogram Sweet Girls 2, Girls Sweets 2. So it's just nonograms and then anime girls, maybe in somewhat lewd positions. Nothing really interesting there. Yeah, what I was gonna say is it would be a real mistake to have a separate YouTube Shorts specifically for VR games, and in a way that I would then try to find VR games to highlight every single day. That would just never happen. This next game is called Ultra Rhythm, which I guess is supposed to be a music rhythm game with flat 2D, colorful anime girls with big thighs and big busts, it looks like. Although it doesn't seem like there's really much of a game here or really a lot of images. It's $1.39. Says it supports 14 different languages. Says the user can see the characters wearing revealing clothing and posing in suggestive poses. Now, noticeably, this game is not in the adult section, and that feels more in line with the way things have been going. Because yes, you've got cleavage here and you've got thighs showing, but I think that's about as far as it goes. Yeah. So, yeah. It seems like the line has been fairly well drawn between what should be in the adult section and what shouldn't. Although at a certain level, there's still problems in which games are getting tagged with nudity, and those tags really should be not allowed unless it's in the adult section, because it is confusing things, to say the least. Like this game, The True Love's Ring, is tagged with sexual content and nudity, and yet it once again seems to really only be showing lewd poses, and not even that lewd of poses really. And it's not in the adult section. It's $1.99, English, Chinese, Japanese. There is a patch here that maybe that adds nudity, so maybe that's the... I honestly think that probably is the best way things should go. Sexual content, general mature content is your warning. Yeah, there might be a patch that just completely removes the dress part here in this picture, or removes the stockings here. Oh. And yeah, we definitely are seeing some bundling going on, because we've now seen 4 or 5 adult games this Friday, where we only saw 2, if I recall correctly, on Wednesday. If anything, I would say we are potentially seeing more anime style games today. We haven't seen really a single 3D CGI Western style adult game. This next game is called Miss Kawaii 3, which kawaii generally means somewhat small and cute, and this art style doesn't feel very anime, to use a word like kawaii in the first place. Suppose this is supposed to be the Final Fantasy character, but these aren't what I would really describe as kawaii anyways as characters. They're definitely not going in the what I would call the kawaii art style. Again, this one's $2.69. Seems to have actual nudity. Supports English, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. And they also want you to buy the second game in the series. That's a bad descriptor, though. It's like... that's... I guess a consistent problem in video games, though, is that they misuse words, Japanese words in particular, to describe themselves, when that's not really what those words mean. Although, in all fairness, the Japanese often misuse English words, not knowing what they mean either. Is there really an argument to playing Tetris, a Christmas Tetris? Although it says Tetris Christmas, so it's backwards there. I don't think so. I don't know why you'd want your screen zoomed out a little bit more just so you can have a Christmas theme around it. Seems wasteful. This game, Reeve, doesn't look like anything. Slurpee's free. Is this a VR game? Yes, it is. So it's supposed to be like a free multiplayer arcade game. I think I'm gonna skip it though. Doesn't look quite interesting enough. It's been a while since we've seen a flat 2D RPG game, but that looks terrible. Here we have a positional placement strategy RPG game with anthropomorphic dogs, it looks like. Which, yeah, I don't think that's interesting enough. Although, arguably, maybe I should have made a YouTube short around that. It's always going to be a curation, though. Like, I just don't think I'm going to get down to the point where I'm trying to say, well, any game potentially could be interesting to anybody, so I should just be making YouTube shorts based on every single game that comes out on Steam. Honestly, I could probably do that. Like, I could be the next What's on Steam type service if I wanted to do that and just have no curation at all and make YouTube shorts around that. But there would be a lot of YouTube shorts coming out then. Probably close to 20, 25 a day. Far too many, I imagine, for the YouTube algorithm. And I guess if Twitter does go away, What's on Steam as a service probably will go away. Here's a Japanese visual novel we talked about on Wednesday called The 13th Month. I don't think this one's going to support English. Oh, I guess it is. There might actually be some more enthusiasm around this that would justify giving it a follow. Plus, there was some level of animation there. It's kind of a unique art style, too. So I'll give that a follow. Yeah, I think we can say no to this. This is just not visually polished well enough to interest me. And then that's just going to be it for today. We oddly saw no Western CGI adult games at all. So many times I felt like the scales were balanced for Western adult games. Well, today we are totally in the opposite direction. We saw at least 4 or 5 anime style adult games released. Maybe that's some bundling. Maybe we'll come back on Monday and there will be a whole bunch of CGI 3D like Western style adult games to balance it out. But right now the scales are very heavily tipped for games that look like anime that were released. So interesting. That's an interesting outcome. even a couple of the adult games actually even felt like they were slightly better than usual, where usually they're 100% garbage. We still really are not getting to a point where anybody is trying to do any level of quality as far as adult games. Something like Succubus was maybe a little bit of an effort at quality, or Lust for Darkness was perhaps a little bit of an effort for quality as far as adult content games, but those games came out months and months ago, half a year ago at least. We're getting no consistent attempts at that type of gameplay. Now we're at the GameDeveloper.com articles. The National Labor Review Board has quashed Activision Blizzard's protest over the Game Workers Alliance Albany union vote. Game Workers Alliance Albany said that the U.S. publisher has failed to, quote, silence its union. Speaking of silencing unions, it has nothing to do with video games, but the railroad workers were threatening to strike, and instead Congress passed a law or something to make it illegal for them to strike, which I have to question. Have people not read Atlas Shrugged? Because isn't that like, or watched the movie Atlas Shrugged at least? Because I'm fairly certain, I didn't read Atlas Shrugged, but I watched the movie. And I'm fairly certain that was the first thing that led to the downfall of society in Atlas Shrugged is that the government tried to pass anti-striking, anti-union rules. But yeah. The United States is run by an oligarchy. It's hard to say it ever wasn't that way. Even when the founding fathers were together, they were very rich people who didn't want to pay taxes on their products. They weren't causing the revolution just for the goodness of their hearts. And it's only gotten more corrupt and worse in 200 years. And I don't know if there's really a great solution to fix that, but I don't know if there's any other country that isn't also run by rich people. The best thing I could say is the illegal thing to say is build a guillotine, find a rich person, off with their head. That's pretty much the only way to balance things out. Is put the fear of God into rich people so that they stop abusing their power, or get rid of rich people, which is more likely what needs to happen. Either by throwing them in jail or taxing them, taking away their money, things like that. As for the Activision Blizzard thing, yeah, that seemed like that was fairly obvious. That's the way this was going to go. This establishes what I would probably describe as a fairly small union of game testers, QA testers, but perhaps one of the first unions in the video game industry, and perhaps a good test case to show where things should go. And if the final steps of unionization go through smoothly, almost certainly this union company will try to stay around if Microsoft acquires Activision Blizzard, which they're trying to do. One of the first Starbucks place, if we're going to talk about unions also, Starbucks shut down the store that was the first store to unionize, and they seemingly might get away with doing that, so I can't see that there isn't a possibility that Microsoft would acquire Activision Blizzard and then shut down Blizzard Albany and try and shut a union bust that way. But we shall see. as I understand it, and maybe I don't understand it very well, what would have to happen here is now that the union is closer to being ratified, the union probably now has to immediately say, we're going to negotiate for a new contract amongst our employees or we're going to strike, and they have to get the company under a specific contract and strike fairly quickly to establish some ground rules and actually have some kind of contract to hold Activision to. Otherwise, it does seem like Activision Blizzard Albany could just shut down its doors and say, we're not dealing with this. And that is the one thing I guess a company could possibly do to break a strike, is to say, we'll just put ourselves out of business before you can threaten to put us out of business. And then that union would have a harder time potentially suing for retaliation or something like that, which they probably could sue for retaliation, but there isn't really a lot of protections. And this is in Albany. Is that Albany, New York, or Albany, Canada? Because the laws might be very different that way. I guess it really doesn't matter. We will see what happens. It's a slow process, and it may very much be much ado about nothing, but probably is the right step forward. Generally, I think everybody is going to have to push for unionization in every job to just protect jobs and reduce hours, because we really are at a point now where people are realizing that they don't want to work 40 hours a week, but they do need to be paid more than they already are being paid for working 40 hours a week, and companies are not going to agree to that willingly. Moving on, Apex Legends Mobile has been named the best Google Play game of 2022, which I guess that's probably a good pick. It seems to me, looking at this list, that there probably wasn't a lot of options here. Genshin Impact, I guess, could have taken it. Papers, Please getting a best story. But yeah. Like, my favorite mobile game, Destiny Child, is new or lewd anime waifu, so it wouldn't be in this group, even though it does kind of make a decent amount of money month to month. There's just not really a lot of competition as far as Google Games, and this Best Games of 2022 just really highlights that. Like, I wouldn't have even known that most of these games were on Google Play. Genshin Impact I knew was on Google, and that's the only game of this entire list that I even knew was on Google Play. Let's see. Nintendo is sorry for making the players suffer through Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We already talked about that. Persona 5 Royale shipped 1 million units on current gen platforms. Already talked about that. Google has honored Jerry Lawson with a game-making doodle game. To honor Jerry Lawson's birthday, the daily Google Doodle lets players create their own game and play through milestones of his life. Which, yeah, that might be interesting, certainly, but what's funny about this is I don't really know this guy, Jerry Lawson, at all. Which is to say, really, these first generation game developers are not people I really recognize. He died in 2011. I honestly first saw this picture and thought he was one of the characters from The Office, and that this was just a joke that somebody was putting out there. So that video select there almost feels like it is an 8-track I was talking about whether or not you could make an 8-track video game with audio. I think I was talking about that on Wednesday on the live stream, but it seems like more likely the Video Select is using an 8-track type cartridge to select different games. This is a long 4-minute video. Yeah, interesting. I really should probably learn some more history, but I'd rather play one more game than sit through even a 4-minute video telling me history of what was a programmer slash hardware developer. Perhaps in my programming classes when I was taught programming, I should have been taught some more history as far as famous programmers. Even people like Alan Turing, were not really talked about in my programming classes because it was all about just learning the programming first and foremost. But a little history certainly could have gone a long way. And definitely I think the way the books they teach out of for programming are bad, and that somebody smarter could write better educational material around programming, something that is more designed for humans and less designed to turn humans into workaholic programmers who will have no social skills or a connection with humanity at all. Let's see. That game company, Sky Children of Light, is coming to PlayStation. We already talked about that. Let's see. Summer Game Fest 2023 will premiere days before E3's return. Which, okay. I guess they're drawing a line in the sand with that. And then Google has started processing Stadia hardware refunds. The company is asking for patience as it works through the refund requests. It probably is getting somewhere close. Give it a month or two, we'll probably get to the point where you could get these Stadia hardware devices cheap on eBay. And see, possibly turn them into something. Although, with the part shortage, any kind of maker space type project should probably just be delayed until somebody else shows that it can be done. These unique Stadia Wi-Fi controllers in particular very possibly will be difficult to program, and if you do program them, you're probably going to need some kind of app to connect them to, since they were directly connecting to the server. And to reprogram them, you very possibly are going to have to solder some wires onto the board and jump some pins, which could be very, very difficult, if not impossible. It could be very locked down too. Right, we have a game called Airhead here that says it's just coming soon. That's on the follow list, so I'm going to just take it off the follow list because it has no release date. We're doing the follow list cleanup now. Aircraft carrier survival is mixed, which is kind of a shame because it kind of looked like a Fallout shelter if you were on a aircraft carrier, and that might have been interesting, but at mixed I'll take it off. Air Car looks interesting and is rated very positively, but it's a VR game, so all I can really do is leave it on the follow list. But by the time I go around to the Z's again, I'm going to probably get rid of that. April 2022, with only one user reviewed this game, just doesn't have the relevancy it would need. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this from the follow list. Airborne is another VR game. I suppose there is a real danger here that a lot of these follow list games are just all going to be VR games. Let's see. Aikagi is not quite relevant enough, I think, to be on the wish list, so I think I kind of have to take it off the follow list. It's a kinetic visual novel without any branches, which, yeah, I don't think as a video game critic I can really try and criticize a visual novel that's just going to tell me a straight linear story with no gameplay mechanics. So that's got to go. AI The Somnium Files, on the other hand, may have some visual novel elements, but it does also have some gameplay, and it's rated very positively. That being said, I don't think I'd ever spend $60 on it, and it looks like there may be some DLC stuff here. Also, I don't think that this is straight up just visual novel stuff. I think there's probably some Persona style gameplay also in it. I also think the AI The Somnium Files series is still in the Shin Megami Tensei series spin-offs. So if I'm not going to play Persona games, then there's an argument to not play this either. Ahiri and Bear is a game where you play as a cat or a dog, but it's mixed reviewed, so we'll get rid of that. Agent Intercept. Some kind of action game. Alright, let's actually make a decision here, otherwise I'm going to just have to leave this on the fall list. So it's an action kind of Mario Kart game where you're doing a lot of shooting, your car transforms, you're getting scores. Yeah, I guess it's good enough. Put it on the wish list. Age of Darkness Final Stand. Dark fantasy real-time strategy game. I don't know how many real-time strategy games I really want to play, but I would have put this on the wish list, but it's still early access. And arguably, if it's been in early access for a year, I don't know if it's ever coming out of early access. Some games just seem to love to stay in early access forever, so they can just continuously tweak it. I'll give it some more time though. And then against. Is this a VR game? Yes, it is. Yeah, I'll leave that on the follow list too. Okay. Let's go ahead and start the spectating. And then I'll scroll down my Twitter feed to see if there's any new news. Harmonix is announcing that Fuser is going to end service in mid-December, which that sucks, because as a rhythm game, that feels like that's something that you really shouldn't need service to end, or service should never end on it. YouTube Gaming saying, given us a number between 1 and 300 and we'll give you a name of a game from our backlog, which is once again an example of YouTube Gaming really having nothing to tweet. Like 300 games in your backlog only? That's rookie numbers, to quote a movie. So, continuously scrolling down here. Apparently AEW is getting 40 weapons for their wrestling game. for AEW Fight Forever, which it's a little weird feeling to see a wrestling game advertise itself by the number of weapons you can bring into a wrestling ring. Let's see. Gearbox released a new shift key. If you're still collecting those, I guess I am. Discord has released a server subscription program in the US, which I guess maybe would let people run their own servers, bigger servers, I guess. I would hope it would be they're offering something new and not taking something away, because I know I set up a Discord server and then never use it, but if all of a sudden they tried to take away that Discord server that I'm not even using and just squatting on and try and get me to pay for it, I would be very unhappy about that. Let's see. Daedalic Entertainment, who should be still working on releasing that Golem game, is talking about Edna and Harvey 3 being a potential game that they would release, or teasing that idea. Which, yeah, maybe that would happen. Although I don't know if I really would go on that journey to do this. Man. Well, that sucks. I started streaming too early today, and so over the weekend I probably need to play a little bit more. It would be kind of dumb to even like try and promise like anything over this weekend. What I imagine I'm going to try to do is play that game Haiti and upload some videos, and probably need to schedule some videos, but in general I just kind of want to get into some kind of pattern of making content and just get better at making content. Marvel Snap is trying to compensate players by giving all players 200 gold. Players who receive no rewards or got boosters from new cash reserves will be able to open them. There was apparently a collector's cash reserves issue. Marvel Snaps introduced a third currency. I talked about this on Wednesday, and that third currency has already gone off the rails, and that for me they're asking for like 6,000 silver coins, and the only way you even get silver coins is by opening up cash reserves and just getting lucky. Inherently, Marvel Snap has gone off the rails with like potentially 5 to maybe 10 different variants of every single card instead of adding new cards, and they're just trying to convince you to play a lot of the game to get these variants or buy them. Treyarch Studios is hiring for a lot of positions, which may be interesting. They also have an Activision game development internship. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they straight up are just going to try and hire a bunch of new people at Activision Blizzard for the other offices so they can shut down the union office. Still scrolling down my Twitter feed, not really seeing a lot of new information. It's not really surprising either because we're right at the end of the year. I imagine everything is just going to go into stasis mode and nothing big is really going to happen. It would be kind of shocking if like the Activision Blizzard merger went through over Christmas, before Christmas happened, but I can't really imagine anything else happening. Yeah, mostly I need to spend the rest of this month not wasting money on any sales, which I imagine there won't be that many sales, but I also need to buy some Legos in the next couple 60 days or so to use the Black Friday Lego discount codes I got. And this week is actually a pretty good week to buy Legos. If you want to spend $200, you'll get 4 different free gifts with purchases, which is a pretty great deal. But everything is also sold out at the moment, so like the things I really would want to buy from Lego, which is not a lot these days, are all out of stock. I have too much Lego at this point anyways, and I haven't gotten around to doing any of it. But I can say next year will probably be a chance to catch up on any backlog of Legos I have, because I spent a lot of this year building the tables to display the Legos, and now that those are built and put in place, finally, I now have more of an excuse. 2023 is probably going to be fairly light on projects, side projects for me to do anyways. Getting Raspberry Pis or doing any kind of computer programming is probably not very likely. Building furniture and decorating is probably not very likely. I do need to work on my irrigation system and make more progress there once it is no longer winter. Anyways, I'm just rambling here. So, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.